Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to Strange Playgrounds. And once again, we have a very, very familiar guest on this evening. We have Lex Jones. Everyone should know by now on this channel. Everyone should know because we've done loads of videos, Lex. We've done loads.
We have.
We've done tons,
We have, yeah.
tons and tons and tons of stuff is what we've done. I can't even remember. Was the first one we did the H.P. Lovecraft retrospective?
I think it was, yes. I think that's what we started with, yeah.
We did Colour Out of Space.
We did.
You know,
Yeah.
I tell you what, Lex, we need to do that film.
I've still not watched it.
Have
I've
you
still
not?
not got to
You are
that.
kidding!
No.
Wow. Oh, I'm not going to talk too much about it then. I liked it. I've got to say.
I will get to it. I will get to it.
I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. It's not like necessarily the Lovecraft as such, but it's
Okay.
got enough in it. It's got enough in
Yes.
it and enough that's interesting that actually it's pretty damn good. I liked it.
I will get to it, and then we can do it.
We can. I mean, that'll be a good one actually. Have you watched it as well, The Void? Have you seen The Void?
Yeah, I remember The Void, yeah.
We'll have to chat about that as well, because it's a Lovecraftian story, but not
Yes,
a Lovecraft
it is very
story.
much,
You know,
yeah.
very Lovecraft, but not very Lovecraftian, but not Lovecraft, as it were.
Yes, it's not based on any of his works, but
No.
the ideas and the themes there.
So
yeah.
Lovecraft, you know. It's like in The Mouth of Madness in that regard, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Just
that's
like in
probably
Mouth
the
of Madness.
classic example of that.
But we're not going Lovecraft this evening. Not well.
No.
We might at
Well,
some
you
point.
might.
We might edge that way, but we're not going Lovecraft this evening. You've got a different idea. You've got a different subject for us this evening. So what are we doing? What's the thing?
I would like to know what your most and least favourite monster types are in horror fiction. So you could be films, books, TV,
Yeah.
just like collectively, and why that is.
Right.
So I don't mean a specific character like
No.
Jason Voorhees or Pennywise or whatever, but like a collective thing. So you might say zombies, for
Yeah,
instance.
like a type rather than a
Yeah.
specific entity. Yeah.
Now, given that we are British and it's much easier to talk about shit we don't like than what we do.
It's easier to whine, isn't it?
It so is. I think it's probably better to do the ones we each like best first, and then that gives you more time to bang on about the one you don't.
That is so fascinating because I've been racking my brains thinking about this, and for me, like, there's no specific category or type of monster that I would say that I absolutely dislike.
No, same here, but it's just if you had to order them, which one would you put at the bottom?
What I find is like it's the framing more than anything. It's the framing and the way they are utilized more than anything.
Well, that's something I will be covering with my personal choice of dislike, is that potentially they could be great, but they're just not used in a way
That's it. I mean, for me, one of the hard sells for me, for example, one of the hard sells is lycanthropes. It's werewolves.
Yeah.
And it's not because of the entity itself. I actually find, like, mythologically and symbolically, the entity is amazing. And in the films and the stories where it's deployed well, it's beautiful. I mean, it can be so beautiful.
Well, actually, that's actually my choice, so I might as well do that one first.
Go for it, man. Go for it.
I just find werewolves boring.
Yeah, I get...
And that's probably why. It's probably because of what you said, in they're always the same sort of trope.
Yeah.
Like, there's about a dozen werewolf films, which is basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It's somebody gets attacked by a werewolf, and then we have to see their slow transformation into this mentally, physically, emotionally, and how it affects the people around them, and then occasionally they might throw in a curveball and make it a woman who's got bitten instead of a man, but essentially it's the same story every time, ever since the Lon Chaney film in the 1930s.
Yeah, the Wolfman, yeah.
You know, and occasionally you get things that do something different, like Dog Soldiers, for instance.
Soldiers is guys, if you've never seen Neil Marshall's Dog Soldiers,
Brilliant.
First of all, shame on you. Second of all, it's one of the most fun experiences I've ever had with a film. It's just...
It's great.
It's so much fun.
what I like in a film, and you don't get it very often, and I understand why you don't, in TV as well, is I like bits where people say or do something in a way that feels like, yes, that is what you would say or do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I understand this as a writer. The reason that often doesn't happen is because quite often you have kind of, excuse me, you have kind of checkpoints to get to in your film
That's
or
it,
your
yeah.
story. And you need your characters to act in such a way that will get to that checkpoint,
Yeah.
which might mean they have to do something a bit out of
like
what you think.
normality, or like
Yes,
out of what would, it's the difference, isn't it, between fictional reality, verisimilitude, and actual reality. Like, because
correct.
actual reality, like out here in the waking world, is not narrative.
No,
It
it
doesn't
is not.
work with reference to like narrative patterns. It doesn't progress like a narrative. It's all random and
It's
weird and
chaotic. It's
chaotic.
absolutely
Yeah,
chaotic real
totally
life. Yeah.
chaotic. Yeah. Whereas fictional reality, even when it tries to emulate verisimilitude, when it tries to emulate actual reality, isn't.
That's what annoys me when people watch films with a character in it and they'll say something like, "Oh, why can't I find a man like that?" Because he's
Well,
not real.
because they're not
Because
real.
everything he
Yeah.
says and does is planned to
Yeah.
make him the perfect human being.
That's
There isn't
exactly it.
anybody like him
Hmm.
because everything he says is planned out.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong.
It's
I totally get being attracted to fictional characters because I think everyone is.
yes,
But
but
because they're
to
idealized.
lament the fact that your husband or wife
Right.
isn't like X
Yeah.
is ridiculous.
Yeah, I will never like meet the Mads Mikkelsen Hannibal, for example, who is like basically sex personified for me. It's just not going to happen, because that he is like a demon, isn't he? He's a fictional entity,
Yeah, well, everything
operating.
about him is crafted
Right.
artificially for a purpose.
Exactly that. And he's a really good example because he's a heightened fictional character who is totally unreal. Nobody is that perfect. Nobody is,
Exactly.
and
So
also he is
sorry, go on.
sorry, he's contrasted by the world in which he operates, which is it's crafted as a very real world, in many respects.
Yes.
There are characters in it who operate in a more psychologically real way, I suppose, and that emphasizes him to the nth degree. It actually acts to emphasize his artificiality, his narrative and mythological nature.
Yeah, because he seems almost like superhuman in a
Yeah.
way
Yeah,
compared to the boring world around him.
totally. That's what makes him attractive.
Yeah.
That's what makes him attractive. It's why he is hot, and he is.
Well, this is the thing. So this is why in horror films you get things like someone hits a serial killer in the leg and then drops the weapon and runs off, and you're
Right.
watching it and thinking, why don't you just push it through his face while he's laying
Yeah,
on the floor?
just
Why don't you
kill.
finish the job?
Yeah, just kill him.
The reason is because there's 20 minutes left of the film.
Yeah, exactly. It's the whole, with
You
the
know,
with the Lord of the Rings, you always get the really nitpicky people say, why didn't they just take the eagles and drop the ring? Because
yes,
there wouldn't have been a quest. There wouldn't
exactly,
have been a
yes,
story. That's why,
yes, exactly.
You
It's
have
those
to.
things. So that is why so often stuff on films, particularly horror films,
Yeah.
doesn't go the way it would in real life.
Yes.
But that, for me, makes the moments where it does that much more satisfying.
Yeah, totally.
And on Dog Soldiers, there is one of my favourite examples with this. Now, I can't remember specifically how it goes, but essentially, one of the soldiers, who are British soldiers, very properly British soldiers, says to the other one, I don't fucking believe in werewolves. I thought they were made up. And the other one says, so did I until 5 minutes ago, but I'd have fucking shot one in the face, so what do you want? And it's like, yeah, that is a realistic conversation. I
It's
didn't
like,
think these were real either, but there's one 10 feet away from me, so what do you want?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that really works. I mean, there is like a groundedness to what Neil
There
Marshall
is.
does, isn't there?
That's why it's such a good film, because it feels like it. This will sound like a ludicrous thing to say, but it feels like it could really happen.
Yeah, and it's not because of like, the portrayal of the werewolves or anything like that. That's completely incidental. It's about the way the characters react to them and the situation, isn't
Exactly.
it?
Yeah.
Totally. And I mean, with regards to the actual werewolves in Dog Soldiers, the way they're framed and shot is fantastic.
Yeah, they are,
You
because
know,
they don't have a great big budget, but they know that.
yeah,
So they show them in such a way that doesn't matter, and I think
yeah.
that's a good decision.
It's that sort of fleeting glimpse thing where
Yes,
they're almost spectral, you know?
but the fact that it's practical effects
Mm,
makes them seem that much more real, even though it might not be the best werewolf costume you've ever seen. The fact that it's not
mm.
CGI makes them there is physically something there, and that is
Absolutely.
always scarier
And
than CGI.
yeah, totally. I mean, actually, talking of werewolf fiction, one of the things that really fucks me off in cinema in particular is seeing CG werewolves. It
Yes.
never works. It never
No.
works. It's always too weightless. And when the transformation occurs, I mean, obviously, in most werewolf fiction, one of the money shots, one of the big moments, is always the transformation, because
Yes.
that encapsulates the themes of what the werewolf is about, the mythological themes. It's that liminality, isn't it? You know, it's that
Yeah.
transition from one state to another. And the very best examples, they use practical effects, you know, and they linger on it. It's that fleshliness. They actually
Yeah.
acknowledge that this is a trauma. This is an
Yeah,
entire
that's the scary bit,
anatomy, you
because
know?
once it's out on the street killing people, it
Right,
could be any monster really, but
right.
it's a transformation aspect, and the fact that the person who it is prior to that is quite possibly a perfectly innocent human being
Yeah, yeah.
who's now been stripped of the humanity and is doing these things.
Right, right, and that's part of the themes of the lycanthrope, isn't it? It's the fact that you
Yeah.
are sublimely losing control, that your animalistic side is coming out, you know, and that hidden part of you, no matter how nice or pleasant or passive you are, is an animal. It's a creature, you know, and it's a blood-hungry one at that. It's a flesh-hungry one. I mean, the classic example of the werewolf transformation that everyone refers to is obviously American Werewolf in London. You know,
Yes, of course.
and,
Yeah,
and there's a
that's like the
reason.
pinnacle, isn't it?
Well,
Really.
there's a reason everyone refers to it. It's for my money, it's probably the first one I've ever seen that really demonstrates to the audience, that here you've got an entire anatomy that's overturning itself. You know,
Yes. Yes. It looks painful as well.
it looks agonizing, which of course it would be. Of course,
Yeah.
it would be one of the most agonizing things. Your whole anatomy is rearranging, so like the bones, the organs, everything is changing. Do you remember like when you were a kid and you'd get growing pains in your legs and your
Yeah.
arms? Imagine that like sped up and like
Yes.
for like up to the power of 1,000,000.
Yeah.
You know? But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's that's. I think that's got to be the source of the horror, but also I think there's the idea of it in that, like, as I said, this could be a perfectly innocent person who's a
Yeah.
good person, and then the going out there tearing people apart and
Hmm.
stuff, and then back to normal the next morning,
Right.
and either they have a recollection of it or they don't. That's depending on the individual film,
Hmm.
but there's quite a lot that could be mined from it, but despite that, whenever I see a new film coming out and it's a werewolf film, I immediately go like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just not that bothered about it."
I
It just,
know. I really know what you mean. It's a hard sell, isn't it?
yeah,
I think it's a harder sell even than like the vampire, you know? I mean, the vampire is such a saturated form of fiction now with thanks to so many franchises, you know,
yes,
whether it was like the Dracula the original, whether it was Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire, whether it was obviously more recently Twilight. It's such a saturated form of fiction, but it's still an easier sell, I think, than the werewolf. And the problem, it's exactly what you were talking about. I think the problem is people don't know what to do with it.
no, you can do a lot with vampires, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of variation from Dracula to Salem's Lot. So
Mm.
from Dracula, where it's like the big vampire in the castle in the
Mm.
middle of nowhere, through to the small town horror of
Mm.
vampires like The Lost Boys and
Right.
Salem's Lot, through to the romantic sort of
Mm.
vampires like Interview with a Vampire and
Yeah.
all the Anne Rice stuff and Twilight, and
Lost
then you've got the
Souls,
stuff
you
where
know.
it's more like then you've got stuff where it's more like combative, sort of like with
Mm.
Buffy and Underworld and that kind of thing. There's a lot of different ways you can come at them,
Hmm.
Whereas with werewolves, it's always someone gets attacked by one, and then we've got to see them struggling with it and transforming and killing people they know. And it's always the same. They don't really know, apart from occasionally where you get something like
Yeah.
dog soldiers. They just so, or they are, obviously there's werewolves in Underworld, but
Right.
the fact that the werewolves is kind of incidental.
Yeah.
Really, they could have been any monster, and
That's
it wouldn't
it.
have made
Yeah.
that much
Well,
difference.
that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because what I find has happened is that the themes of the werewolf have been taken and they've been used for different things. So that whole notion of liminality, of transformation, or of being an entity that's between one world and another, that
Yeah,
has been taken and transplanted into lots of different entities as time has gone on and as fiction has evolved and transformed. And as a result, it's taken a little bit, it's detracted a little bit away from the poor old werewolf, which by comparison
yes.
is often quite dull.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree.
And it's a
I do
shame.
think I do, and I have enjoyed some werewolf
Me
films.
too.
But personally, I really like the Wolfman one they did a couple of years
Hmm.
ago. It was a remake of the original
Right,
Wolfman,
right.
but done with modern effects, modern
Mm.
actors, all that kind of thing. I think it was what's his name, Benedicto del Toro.
Benicio del
Yeah, it was
Toro,
Benedicto.
yeah.
Yeah, it was very good. I really liked that.
Hmm.
It had that kind of classic horror
Hmm.
feel to it, and I liked a lot of those things, but I just cannot help that reaction that when I see a new thing's coming
Yeah.
out and it's focusing on werewolves, I just immediately think, oh,
I have
all
exactly the
right,
same reaction. And I mean, the one I really love, the reinvention of it I really loved was Gingersnaps. Because
yes,
it took, I mean, the classically the werewolf is such a masculine male
yeah,
archetype, isn't it? It's all about, I mean, ultimately it derives from like fairy tales. It's the big bad wolf, and the big bad wolf, as Angela Carter pointed out in her book The Bloody Chamber, when she rewrote those old fairy tales and brought out all of like the sexual tensions and the politics of
yes,
them. The big bad wolf is men. It's male
yes,
appetite, it's basically the rapine male appetite coaxing like the young girl from the path, yeah.
yes, of course,
Um,
yeah.
and so it's always been this massive archetype of sort of male sexuality, I suppose, in many respects. But
Like
it,
you're hiding it beneath this veneer
mm,
of like politeness and wearing your
right,
smart suit and all that, and
right.
yeah, beneath it there's this desire to just rip and tear and all that. Yeah,
But what Gingersnaps did was it removed it from that totally and married the obvious like lunar mythology of the werewolf to the menstrual cycle. Made
yes,
it very
yes.
female and very like classically mythological in that regard. It's like marrying it to old mythological tales of the old blood goddesses and moon goddesses like Artemis and
Yeah,
Tiamat and
Alan Moore
whatnot.
did that in the Swamp Thing as well.
Yeah, that's really clever because that fits so well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if you've read that, but in Alan Moore's run on the Swamp Thing, there was a werewolf story, and that
Right.
was the same. They tied that in with like ancient sort of Native American sort of mythology around like women's
Right.
cycle and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, like
And
the
yeah,
skinwalker and all of that kind of thing.
yeah,
Now that's
yeah,
really clever. I like it when people take like the archetype of something like the werewolf, like a classic monster like the werewolf, or like the vampire for that matter, and do something fascinating with it. When they rejig it a little bit or when they invert it to bring out some hidden theme or some hidden significance that maybe people haven't considered before.
yes,
I really love that. I really love that. When it's done well, I think it's beautiful. I think it can be done really well. And I think there's such potential in the werewolf and in entities like it, but which is so rarely addressed. It's so rarely brought up because there is this horrible tendency with entities like the werewolf to just rely on the familiar, isn't there?
yeah,
To go
yeah,
with
very
like,
much, yeah.
the classic tropes, the classic beats. And even that can be done well. Even that can be done well. It is possible to tell the classic sort of Victorian Gothic tale about something like the werewolf. It's possible to do it really well. It just so rarely is done well.
Yeah, it tends to fall back on the usual stuff quite often.
Hmm. You know what
and
it
you get the same thing you've seen before.
You know what it is for me? It's weightlessness. This is true of almost any entity you can talk about, but for me, with the werewolf, there's something so fleshy about it. There's something so like anatomical about the werewolf that I want to feel
Yeah.
that. When I read a story about a werewolf, when I watch it on the screen, I want to be able to feel it. You should be able to like smell the fur and blood of the thing, the heat of its
Yes.
body. That's kind of what I want. It's the atavism of it, because that's what it's about, surely.
Yeah, it's very much a physical thing, and it exists in our world, on our plane, and it could be someone you sat next to on a bus, and
Right.
there's all of that about it. It's not kind of kept away by the same barriers that you have with a vampire not being able to come out in the day,
Right.
or you
Well,
know,
the
a sea monster
vampire.
that can only get you when you're in the sea, and they
Yeah.
don't have those kind of barriers to it.
I mean, there's other implications as well that are very rarely explored. Like, for example, lycanthropy is very often in most mythologies. Lycanthropy is a disease. It's
Yes.
it's either like a metaphysical disease or it's a biological disease passed on through the blood, through like bites and whatnot. And there is so much hidden potential that you could play with there.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how they do it on the new Resident Evil,
Right, yeah. I mean, that
because they've gone with
obviously
werewolves, haven't they,
they
for the first
have.
time?
So that has got to be biological because there is no like metaphysics in the.
No, they always sort of advertise Resident Evil games as though it's going to be
Mm,
supernatural, like you see cults and
right,
stuff like that. But if you know anything about the mythology of Resident Evil, you
right.
know that it's not.
Absolutely.
So I don't know why they even bother with that, because it's like the beginning of Scooby Doo where they
Yeah,
fall for it. Oh, it's a ghost. You know it isn't. How many
yeah,
of these cases have you investigated now?
yeah. It worked like for the first Resident Evil when no one knew what the
Yes,
mythology was. But
exactly.
after that, nah, you can't really get away with it. I mean, Resi 7 actually did it really well because they removed Resi 7 so powerfully from everything else that had gone before. And it played
Yes.
it to the hilt. Up until the point you find out, and by the way, massive spoilers, guys, so if you don't want to know, turn off or move on, yeah? Um, and up until like the last chapters when you find out that it's like this bioengineered fungus that's causing all of the weird like
Yes.
hallucinations and the seemingly distorted reality and whatnot, until that point you could believe that it's something supernatural happening.
Yes, you could. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Very
mean,
much so.
I mean, even the last encounter plays with that because the fungus is inside Ethan's mind now. It's
Yes.
like playing with his perceptions of reality, so it looks like the house is like erupting around him, and like as though there's like this cyclone of insanity and delirium swirling around. But it's not. It's all happening in his perceptions. It's all entirely grounded in
Yes.
the actual, in the biological.
Well, I thought that as well with like when you're fighting the last boss on that,
Mm,
like, is it? This sounds daft, but like, is it actually that big?
right,
Do you
right.
know, I know that it's not an entire hallucination. These
No,
guys are mutated and
mm,
inhuman, but is it actually as big as it looks? Or how
right.
much of that is his sort of hallucination of it?
That's it. It's hard to tell, isn't it? And I think that ambiguity is really clever, actually. I love that the fact that they play with that. Maybe they'll go down that route with a new one. Who knows?
Could do, but I know that there are werewolves in it, and I
Yes,
assume that it's
and
going to be like a viral thing.
yes, it also looks like. I mean, I'm inferring quite a lot here, but there's certain shots in the trailer that make me think there's going to be vampires as well, or something like vampires. Something like
How so?
analogous to vampires. There's shots in the trailer where you see these very regal looking. They look like the brides of Dracula. Basically, they
All
are
right, yeah,
they are designed to look like the brides of Dracula. And I'm like, you know what? They're going to go for the full on gothic tropes, aren't they? I
yeah, it looks like
imagine
it.
there's going to be your werewolves. There's going to be your vampires. Maybe they'll even throw some other stuff in there. Maybe they'll be like banshees or whatever. Something equivalent
Yeah,
to them. And the fun of the Resident Evil franchise is you can get away with that. You can do
yes,
that because, well, the Umbrella Corporation are constantly making like bioengineered entities and altering the DNA of creatures to make them more monstrous. In fact, I mean, Resi's a really good shout when it comes to werewolves because there are loads of those liminal entities in Resident Evil that aren't
yeah.
werewolves, but that share the same sort of transformative qualities. So Birkin's basically like derived from werewolf mythology. You know?
What he is, but what would make werewolves unique, kind of within the realm of Resident Evil, is the
Mhm.
fact that they change back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that doesn't generally happen with any
No.
of the stuff in Resident Evil.
No. When you're virused, you are screwed.
Yeah. So
Like
the idea of a virus that mutates you into something and then sort of recedes,
mhm.
that will be different.
It would, wouldn't it? So like maybe because obviously the ideal bioweapon for the people who engineer this stuff in Resident Evil would be one that you can inject and that you have some degree of control over.
Yes. Yeah, so activate these agents, turn them
Right.
into the weapons, and then switch them back to human civilians to get to extract them.
Surely that's what they want. Surely that would be the best thing. So maybe that's where they've gone. Maybe that's what we're gonna get. Who knows? Who knows?
Could be that could be an interesting take on it, but I still had that same reaction when I saw the advert and then I
Mm.
saw the werewolves. I still had that. Oh,
hmm
it's werewolves. Yeah,
Yeah, I know. I know that. I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I have the same thing these days with zombies.
yeah,
I
yeah. They're
really do.
getting there with me.
And don't
Yeah,
get me wrong, I actually love zombies. I think like really good zombie stories are fantastic. I love like again, I've got a thing about weight and fleshiness. So for me, zombies are they're all about physical morbidity. So it's when you see the extent to which a zombie is rotting and decayed, but is still moving, is still
yes,
walking. I think that's amazing. I love that to bits. That imagery, I love to bits. I think the book of like World War Z is fantastic. You know, where it's all told in retrospect and it's like news
yes,
cuttings.
yeah,
It's epistemological. It's like Dracula and like War of the Worlds. You know, it's Victorian
yeah,
style fiction. I think that is wonderful. But it's one of those things that is so saturated these
yes.
days.
It is zombies very much.
And it's
Yeah,
so codified as well, you know, thanks to the prevalence of things like The Walking Dead and whatnot. It's so codified. I remember like I was doing a lot of editing for like small presses like when The Walking Dead hit its peak. And
yeah.
I got to the point where I was almost asking the presses I was doing a little bit of like freelance work for. It's like, don't send me any zombie apocalypse stories because
Yeah,
I am fucked off with them. They're all the same. They're all really boring. My problem isn't, I mean, it's not even the notion of the zombie apocalypse. I mean, I actually think that can be loads of fun. It's a great setting to play in. It's just that they're all the same. Nobody seems to
yes.
do anything interesting with them. All the character archetypes are the same. The way they portray the zombies is the same. And it's like, come on. Come
I
on.
really liked 28 Days Later for that
Love it.
because
Loved it.
you've kind of when the character that you follow, Cillian Murphy's
hmm
character, by the time you're following him, the apocalypse has kind of already happened.
Yeah.
All the scenes that you usually get in a zombie apocalypse film have already been and gone.
Yep.
He's kind of there in the very end of it. So, like, you actually see the zombies starving to death a few days later because
Yeah.
they've already, because they are still human beings. They
This
might be
is it.
possessed by this virus, but they still need to eat and shit. And
That's it.
because they're not doing that, they are just going to drop dead at some point.
Right, they're not supernatural. It's not like, say, Night of the Living Dead, where,
Exactly.
I mean, one of the things I love about the original Night of the Living Dead, which is, I mean, I know it's cliche, but it is one of the best zombie films out. I mean, it basically codified the entire genre, didn't it?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
And
yeah.
one of the strengths of it is that it doesn't really explain.
Doesn't it say something about a meteor,
It
or is that
says
a
you
different
get
one?
no, you're right. You get these like vague. There are news reports over the radio of like there's a comet passing by, and
Right.
that's it. That's all you know. And
Yeah.
even that is vague. You don't know if that's like what caused it or if that's like a sign that it's going to happen. And
Good point. Yeah.
the lack of explanation makes it really frightening, I find. But within like films like 28 Days Later, the fact that it's very clearly explained actually works really well as well because what that does is it sets up the rules. You
Yeah, but
know,
you see the very beginning of it, and
hmm
then it cuts, doesn't it?
that's it.
you see how it starts, and then you see this has happened. The country's been ravaged by it, and now this guy's walking around empty streets, and there are still a few zombies, but you
Right.
don't get those like mass crowds of them like
Right.
you would have done in the midst of the apocalypse,
Yeah.
because most of them have either been shot or they've starved to death, or
Most of them are
you know,
dead, yeah. Most of them
yeah,
are dead, yeah, because they aren't. I mean, they're not like zombies as people would classically refer
no,
to them. They are just people with a disease,
yes, yeah.
and it's
And
yeah,
they
it's it.
do still need to eat and
Hmm.
drink, but they're not going to do any of that.
Right.
So at some point, that adrenaline is going to burn out, and they're just going to lay in the street and die.
That's it, and it's a very clever take, actually. It's a very clever take on the classic tropes. I mean, obviously, since then, so many people have copied 28 Days Later because it is
Yes.
such a good idea. It's such a great film. Again, zombie stories tend to work best when they are reflections of humanity, because zombies very obviously are, maybe more so than any of the monsters you could possibly talk about. They're very obviously reflections of humanity. It's when you've got contrasted human beings operating under the duress that the zombies put them under. Now,
Yeah.
unfortunately, things like The Walking Dead have taken that so far that they've wrung it of all potential and all
Yeah.
significance, you know? So for me, really, if we're going to talk like zombie stories and zombie films now, they have to do something really bloody clever. There's a story in one of Billy Martin, aka Poppy Z Bright's short story collections. I can't remember what it's called and I can't remember what collection it's in, but it's a zombie story and it is fantastic. It's set in Calcutta in the 1980s, and the character that the protagonist is wandering through, they know there are zombies, they know that there's this plague of the undead, basically. But because Calcutta was in such a fucking state at that time, he makes the observation that there are so many poor and starving people, you can't tell the living dead from the living.
Yeah. That's harsh. Yeah.
That's such a
Yeah.
cool take, don't you find?
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
that's a clever way to take it. I think that's really bloody brilliant. If you're going to use the zombie as social commentary, that's kind of cool.
I find that the social stuff gets a bit annoying in
Mm,
stuff like you said, like The Walking Dead. Like, why don't you just
mm.
stick a big banner up in the background saying humans are the real monsters?
That
You know,
yeah
it's like,
yeah
yeah, we get it, we
that
get it. You
yeah,
know,
and also in like situations in The Walking Dead, just shoot yourself.
yeah, it
No,
just gets so bad, doesn't it? It's like,
there's
forget it.
there's only so far human beings can cope with atrocity and trauma and
Yeah,
duress before, and we know this, you know, as awful as it is, there have been experiments into this, you know, under certain
yeah,
extreme regimes. We can't take that much when it comes to trauma and duress and whatnot before we just give up.
yeah,
So just
yeah,
you know, just eat a bullet, you know, just end it, it's fine.
yeah.
Just,
I would, yeah, you would. You absolutely would.
you know, that's part of the
The,
problem. I mean, actually, have you ever seen the Midnight Gospel?
no, I don't
The
think so.
Midnight Gospel is great. Midnight Gospel is an animation that's on Netflix at the moment by the guy who created Pendleton Ward, who created Adventure Time. And all it is, it's the zaniest, maddest, most hallucinogenic animation that's sculpted around a podcast, a philosophical podcast that Pendleton Ward likes. And one of the first episodes deals with one of the framing situations is a kind of classic zombie apocalypse. And during the midst of this, one of the main characters gets bitten by a zombie, right? And
Okay.
then it shows you what the world looks like from the perspective of the people who are infected or who are zombies. And it becomes this incredibly wonderful, peaceful, Edenic world
Okay.
where everything is beautiful and everything is happy and everyone is wonderful. And it's like, that's kind of clever.
Yeah, that's different.
Isn't
Yeah.
it? Isn't that fun? I kind of like that. It's base. I mean, it's not a new thing. It's not a new thing. It's what it's the end. It's basically the end of I Am Legend, the
Yes.
original book. You know,
Yes.
where it establishes that however horrific you might find the creepers, the entities in I Am Legend, they are the new humanity,
Yeah.
and that's the end of it. You know, you may not like it, but it's tough. They are the new humanity, and
Yeah.
that
They've
that's
supplanted us now.
that's
Yeah.
kind of a fun way to take it.
I think another way of doing it is having the small scale, and I think
Mm,
that is why, relatively speaking, I think that is why 28 Days Later worked,
mm,
because it's not the whole world,
yeah,
it's one country,
yeah,
and it's our country, and it gives you that feel that somehow the fact that it's not everywhere else somehow
yeah.
makes it scarier.
It
The knowledge
does.
that over in France, life's carrying on as normal,
Hmm.
and you could be sat on a beach with a glass of wine in your hand, but you're not. You're running through the street getting chased by zombies. That
Right.
somehow makes it worse,
It
if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. It emphasizes the tragedy of it. It
Yeah.
gives you a sort of like why me feeling, doesn't it? You know,
Mm,
why is this
exactly.
happening here?
Yeah.
Why us? Um, yeah, that's actually again that's another very clever way of taking it, isn't it? Looking at it from that perspective. I mean, zombie stories are often all about psychology, aren't they?
Yeah.
Ultimately, they're
Yeah.
often all about human psychology, what humans do under duress, what humans are capable of when the shit hits the fan.
Have you seen that one called The Cured with Ellen Page in it?
No,
That's
no.
after a zombie apocalypse. So it's
Hmm.
happened. They found a cure. They've
Yeah.
cured people. The world's rebuilding now.
Hmm.
And I don't mean rebuilding in a Walking Dead sort of way. You
Right.
know, things never got that bad,
Yeah.
but a lot of people died. There was a lot of kind. Do you know what always does my head in a very quick sidebar on zombie films? When you'll see something like a military vehicle, like a tank,
uh,
upturned in the street on fire or something, and you
right.
think, how the fuck have zombies done that?
Right. Right. Unless there was like a
It's not
mass.
the Hulk.
Right.
How have they managed that?
Yeah.
You
Unless
know,
there was
the
like a.
idea that yeah, the idea that the zombies, you know, there's like Air Force jets crashed in
Yeah.
the street, and you think,
Yeah.
how has this happened?
Right, I know what you mean. Was there just a moment of mass coordination where all of the zombies decided we're gonna flip that tank? You know?
Exactly. But it's like, there's no way the zombies could actually overcome the
Right.
military. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I do know
But
exactly what you mean.
so yeah, in this film, The Cured, what they do is they don't do that. They don't say that the zombies won. They didn't. There
Mm.
was a mass outbreaking of them. Uh, you never really find out why, and it's ultimately it is cured.
Right,
But
right.
then what the film deals with is the kind of prejudice against people who used to be a zombie and now aren't. So the
Oh.
film focuses on this one guy, and it's a few years since I've seen it, so I might get this wrong. I think Ellen Page's character's his sister. I don't
Mm.
think there's a romantic thing. And he killed a bunch of people as a zombie. But
Right.
the way the law has covered that is said you are not responsible for what you did whilst you were
Well,
infected.
yeah.
So he's trying to rebuild his life and everything, but he can't get a job and people don't trust him. And it's all, you
Wow.
know, there's like politics around it, and it's all to do with that. And it's just quite an interesting take on it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it warrants a 2 hour film. It feels more like it should have been like a 45
Yeah.
minute episode of Black Mirror or something. But
Right.
it's a good concept, and
It is,
it's well
isn't it?
acted and stuff.
Like
Yeah.
conceptually, that's really interesting. I
Yeah,
love the
because I think
concept.
it's far more realistic that in an event of something like that the human race would not be annihilated by
Yeah.
it. Because, like I said, with the military intervention, the
Mm.
zombies are not defeating tanks and fighter jets. I'm
Hmm.
sorry. At some point, you just nuke the city that was the
Yeah.
problem and cut your losses. You know,
Hmm.
there'd be severe damage as there was in World War II, but
Hmm.
ultimately you would rebuild and carry on.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So a film that says yes, there was a lot of damage caused, human life lost,
Hmm.
but now we've moved past it and life is sort of rebuilding. That is more realistic to me,
Yeah.
and addressing what that would look like rather than the 20 rather than the Walking Dead style everyone's gone tribalistic sort of thing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I
It
know.
just felt
Yeah.
more realistic to me. I could recognise this world.
Yeah.
I could recognise this world that we're living in, you know?
Yeah. I know
Whereas
what you mean.
Walking Dead's just like, it's like a 15-year-old, it's like it feels like a 15-year-old's vision of what the world
Yeah.
will be like.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of the fun of zombie fiction. It's the potential for exploring like both dystopian and utopian themes, isn't it? I mean, what I haven't seen very much of in zombie fiction, certainly zombie apocalypse fiction, I've seen a lot of the dystopianism, but I haven't
Yes.
seen it portrayed as a kind of renewing event. Where
Yes.
a new order or something, or a new form of civilization can build out of what came before. That's another interesting take that I've very rarely seen. Very rarely.
Yeah, it's a different way of doing it. But again, this is what we're saying though. So like zombies, like vampires, there's quite a lot you can do with it.
Yeah.
Whereas werewolves, I don't feel there is. So that's my
Mm.
one that I like the least is
Yeah.
is werewolves really.
Well, I
So
mean, I mean, with regards to the werewolf, another thing that I love when authors do it, but again, it's really rare, is when they look at like the fairy tale roots of the concept. Have you seen You've seen the Company of Wolves?
yes, yeah,
Yeah, you get a really good exploration of it's a combination of like the fairy tale big bad wolf and the lycanthrope, the werewolf, and again a really good transformation, which is all done with puppetry and whatnot. It's
yeah,
absolutely brilliant, and that commingles what we were talking about earlier. It's got all of like the fleshy atavism of the werewolf, but also all of the slightly heightened Little Red Riding Hood stuff as well. And again, I mean, it's based on Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, so it's all about sex. It's ultimately
yes, of
all
course,
about
yeah,
sexuality. But it explores both like male sexuality and female sexuality as well. It's obviously the Little Red Riding Hood character is all about sort of burgeoning female sexuality and the way it is both explored and denied and suppressed within culture.
yes,
it's
absolutely,
it's really fascinating, and it's very complex. It's very ambiguous as to like the conclusions it comes to. You've got to really, in order to understand the way the story and the film work, you've got to be kind of literate in exploring metaphor and
yeah,
symbolism and whatnot. Otherwise, you're not going to understand. You're not going to get it because it doesn't ever come out and say, "Ah, yes, this is what this means, and here's the implication of this." It relies upon you interpreting things, and I find that is often a problem of werewolf stories as well. They very often the people creating these things. As awful and again as kind of snobbish as this sounds, they're just not aware. They're not aware of like the the symbolic and metaphorical freight that the werewolf inhabits and that it
no,
carries. And if you're not aware of it, you can't tease it out. You can't play with it. You can't sort of explore it in the story that you're writing or creating. And that's a real shame because again, it just becomes a matter of aesthetics then, doesn't it?
yes, it does,
You know?
yes, that's right.
It becomes very superficial, and I'm not really interested in that. I'm not interested in like the werewolf just ripping people apart and whatnot. I find that powerfully dull.
Yes, same here. Yeah, because it could be anything at that point.
That's
Once it comes into that.
this is something I was thinking about earlier when I was thinking about this very conversation. Like, it's not necessarily any particular monster, but when it comes to the threat, them tearing you to bits, I'm kind of bored. I don't. Well, the worst they can do in that instance is kill you.
Yeah, and then it
Fine.
could be a lion or a
Right.
crocodile or something
Exactly.
that exists in our world anyway.
Exactly. And that, more than anything, is what bores the arse off me.
Yeah,
It's the same with killers in fiction. It can be done really well. It can be done beautifully, but I am so beyond bored with the sort of slasher film villain
yeah.
all they're going to do is kill you. All they're going to do is kill lots of people in elaborate ways. It's like
There
so.
was an interesting version of that a couple of years ago with that
Mm.
film. Oh God, it was set at one of those Halloween carnivals that they do in
Mm.
America.
Oh right,
You know, do you know those big like Halloween
I do.
nights where
Hmm.
you know where you go in like haunted houses, quote unquote, where there's
Hmm.
people dressed as ghosts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was called like Hell Night or something. I can't remember what it was called.
Hmm.
That's really going to annoy me. But basically, it's one of them where there's loads of people in mass and they jump out at you and scare you and there's fake blood and all that. And somebody goes on a killing spree at
Yeah.
one of them because it's the perfect place to get away with it. Because
Absolutely,
if you
yeah.
see a corpse laying in the street bleeding, you think that's part of the thing.
Right, people, I mean, they think it's part of the artifice, yeah?
Exactly. So,
That's
and
fun.
everyone there is in a mask and a costume.
Hmm.
But if you don't mind me giving away the ending of
No,
it,
go
so
ahead.
just
I
a
don't care.
spoiler to that.
Spoilers, guys.
It's a bunch of teenagers who are there who get picked on by this killer who's stalking them, kills other people as well, but kills them.
Right.
No real reason why. You never find out why. And right at the end, you see this killer turn up at a house, like in a middle class suburban area, sneak into the house, put his mask away in a cupboard, and then walk into the living room, and you think, oh, he's going to kill his family now. And he just sits down and puts the telly on.
Right.
And then woman shouts from upstairs and like, oh, you're back early, honey. Did you have a good day? Did you have a nice evening at work or something? And he's just like, yeah, it's not bad. I managed to get a bit done. I'll not have to stay as late at the office tomorrow, something like that.
Right.
And you realise that this is just some normal bloke.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is just some normal bloke who has a psychotic urge to kill people. So he decided to do it on this particular event because it was the perfect cover for him to get away with it scot-free. And he'll probably do it next year.
Well, that's even kind
and
of.
I quite like that.
I
like
that because it's kind of realistic. That's kind of how serial killers operate, you know.
Yeah. It's not the blatantly obvious guy with the big scar across his face who lives in a shack in the woods. It's it's just some dude. It might be a doctor, it might be a stockbroker. You don't know.
Right,
but he has this urge, so he finds a way in which to cover it up. And to get away with it, and
Absolutely.
So he does it then, and then goes back home and carries on living normally, and you see, that kind of it makes it scarier.
That does make it scary. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want people to get the wrong idea here. That serial killers in film and fiction can be brilliant. They can be done so beautifully well. Reference once again Hannibal, the TV series, chock full of them, and portrayed beautifully. I mean, absolutely beautifully. Seven is another really good example.
Yes.
Seven, it's just an amazing piece of work. But when it comes to things like, for example, like the Friday the 13th films, where it is, I mean, don't get me wrong, again, I get the appeal of them. I do get the appeal of them. It's just, after a while, it bores the arse off me.
Yeah, same here, yeah.
It just bores the arse off me. I think the original Halloween is amazing.
Yes, it is, yeah.
I think it's an amazing film, primarily because I love the ambiguity of it. You know, at the end when Michael Myers is shot off the balcony and he's been stabbed, he's been like, he should be dead. He should be dead. And then he falls off the balcony and you get that wonderful phrase, it was the boogeyman, wasn't it? And then you look off the balcony and he's gone. And that's it. That's kind of it. And it's like, maybe he was. Maybe there is something like slightly mythological and supernatural going on.
Yes.
Love that. Love that ambiguity.
As soon as they confirm it in one of the later films and say, there is something supernatural about him.
Why? Why did you have to do that? I mean, yeah, absolutely. The ending of the original film is perfect. And the existence of sequels murders it. Completely murders them. But I find the whole thing where the motivation is just to kill. It's like, well, where can you go with that? And that's true of lots of things as well. It's true of things like other entities as well, things like ghosts and demons and whatnot. I mean, one of the ones I kind of wanted to talk about was it's the portrayal of demons, and in a particular way.
Your one?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's difficult for me to have one, to be honest, because it's like I find it difficult in the sense that there isn't really one. It just depends on the way they're framed. I mean, I think demons can be beautiful. They can be portrayed in such an amazing, beautiful way. But when it is just, it's a demon and it's evil and it's harming people, and it's like, well, why? Especially if it's like an intelligent entity. I mean, we may have had this discussion before, but if it's an intelligent entity and it clearly demonstrates its intelligence, like Pazuzu in The Exorcist, and yet all it's doing is just being negative for the sake of it, and I'm like, well, why?
Yeah, what do you get out of this?
This is never explained. What is the demon getting out of it?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, for one thing, why aren't they trying to reason with it? It is intelligent. It talks. It has, like, animus. You can actually sit down. It's not like a zombie. It's not like a werewolf. You can actually sit down and talk to this entity and be like, well, what do you want? What's the end game here? You know, is there a reason why you're performing these grotesque parlor tricks, why you're making the girl's head spin around, or is it just silly?
Yeah, I agree.
Because
Or like on
ultimately,
the Paranormal Activity, why are you opening
right,
all kitchen cupboards?
right.
What do you get out of this
What's
exactly?
the point? I can understand when it's explained. There are films that explain it beautifully, where it's like raw elemental negativity or something like
Mm,
that. Where it works. Fine, I can get that. I can get behind that. But when it is just it's evil because of its nature, I'm like, you know what? The implications of that are stretching very deep into almost fascistic thinking,
yeah,
where things are evil because they're evil because they're evil because of the nature of their existence. It's the problem. It's a problem that's not just in horror. It's in lots of forms of fiction. In fantasy, you get it with, like, for example, the orcs in
yeah.
The Lord of the
Why are
Rings.
they evil? Just because? Yeah, I've always found that to be troublesome. To be honest.
Is there not? I mean, this is actually, funnily enough, Terry Pratchett's Discworld.
Yeah,
This is where it comes from. Terry Pratchett read The Lord of the Rings when he was a teenager, and he thought, well, one of the things that sort of occupied his mind is like, well, are there like mother orcs like sitting in
yeah,
their holes somewhere with children orcs, and are they thinking like, oh, daddy's gone off to fight the evil race of
yeah,
men,
yeah.
And
Well,
what?
that's how like Al Qaeda work.
Right,
You've got while
right.
we're fighting crazy extremists. Well, I say we, not us, but while the
Yeah.
army is fighting like say crazy extremist terrorists,
hmm
they've got wives and children at home telling them that daddy's out fighting the evil Western
Right,
people who worship
fighting the
Satan.
the good
You
fight,
know?
exactly. Exactly. So the notion that there are entities that are born evil and they are irredeemable, they are just elemental negativity. I find that really problematic on a number of levels.
Yeah.
It can be done well. It can be done well, and it has been done well. But it is a hard, hard sell for me.
Yes.
I find it problematic, and there comes a point when I find it boring as well.
Okay.
You know, there comes a point in many works of fiction where I'm like, okay, fine. So we know that this thing is just going to do the most negative thing imaginable.
Yes. Yeah, I know what you mean. It
You
kind of
know, it's
something that makes humans interesting protagonists as or humanistic entities is evil is that they can the combination of things they can do.
yeah, right.
They can do something terrible immediately
Mm,
followed by, and I think that was in the um, Avengers Infinity War. I thought the
mm,
way they portrayed Thanos was very good.
hmm
Did you watch that?
Oh
Have you
yeah,
seen
I've
that
seen
one?
Infinity War. Yeah, yeah.
Now, because Thanos is one of my favorite characters in the comics, so I
Mm,
was interested how they were going to do him in the film, and I thought they got him really right. I thought
mm,
they really nailed the portrayal of him. Because, like, in one film, you know that he wants to do this universal
mm,
annihilation, but earlier in the film, you see him talking with a child when he's talking to Gamora when she's
hmm
a little girl, and in the background, while he's talking to her, his army is slaughtering her
Her
people.
people, yeah.
And when she hears the noises of the screaming, she turns to look and he turns her head back round
hmm
because he's like, no, you don't need to see this. So
hmm
he's like, he's got this degree of compassion about him, but at the same time, his objective is, I'm going to slaughter half of your
Right,
planet.
right.
And that duality, that is so very, I know he's not human, but it is so very human.
hmm
That fact of you can do something so terrible, but then something born in compassion in the next breath.
Right. I mean,
There is something human about that.
it's a difficult thing, isn't it? I mean, for me, I think it derives the problems I've got with the portrayals of elemental evil, and it can be good. Don't I mean, I really want to emphasize this. You can do it really well, and it can be brilliant. When you've got just like the totally bastard character who is just
Yeah,
malevolent and it revels in it. It often works well in sort of fantasy archetypes, when you have like I don't know, like the Lord of Darkness in Legend, for
legend.
example,
Yeah,
or the Skeksis, for example. Actually, the Skeksis in the Dark Crystal are a fantastic example because yeah, they are like elemental negativity, and they will always do the most selfish, vile, cruel thing imaginable. But there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's like a mythological reason. It is because they actually are the
Yes.
negative sides of the Urskeks, these like divine beings that were shattered into two, basically. So
Yeah.
you've got the mystics, who are their heightened selves, who are all peace and contemplation and all that kind of thing, and empathy. And then you've got the Skeksis, who are ego and appetite and cruelty. And in that
Yeah, it's
regard,
like Jekyll and Hyde, isn't it? It's
right,
literally split into the two
right.
extreme aspects of humanity there. Yeah.
When it works, it works. When it's explained and when it's part of the mythology, it works really, really well. And in fact, Jekyll and Hyde is a really good shout because I love that book. It's got to be one of my favorite Victorian novels ever written. I think that Jekyll and Hyde is absolutely beautiful. But what I love about Jekyll and Hyde is that most people don't realize this because they haven't read it. You know, they've just seen like the cartoons or the films or whatever. But in the
Yes.
book, the notion of Hyde being like the more negative side of the pair is actually not true.
Mm.
It's not true. Very early on in the letters that are being read, because obviously it's epistemological, just like most
Yes, it
Victorian
is.
fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
In one of the confessions that Jekyll writes, he talks about how despite his veneer, despite the sort of respectable, passive, empathic person that he appears to be, he is a man consumed by what he refers to as the most sordid appetites. And
Yes.
occasionally, this is before he's created the formula, by the way, that brings out Hyde. Occasionally, he indulges them. He never explains what that means, because this is
Yeah.
polite Victoria, and you don't do that. You don't talk about like whatever the hell he's doing, whatever the hell he's going out there and doing. You don't talk about it. What the novel exemplifies is that Hyde is not the dark side of Jekyll at all. Hyde is a mask.
Yes.
What Hyde allows Jekyll to do is indulge every sordid appetite that he's got, but without guilt, because it's not him that's doing it, it's Hyde.
Does he ever actually change physically though?
Yes, he
Because I
does. Yeah.
does he actually change
Mm.
physically?
The
Okay.
problem is, in most portrayals, they portray him as like transforming into this grotesque, into a monster.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not it. Hyde looks perfectly like anybody else. He does physically transform. When people see Edward Hyde, it's a different man from
It's
Henry
just a
Jekyll.
different man, but he's still a
Right.
perfectly human.
He's
Yeah.
not monstrous in any way, shape, or form. In fact, this is part of the horror of Hyde. He is perfectly normal looking. He's a bit short. That's it. Nobody can
Yeah.
identify anything particularly wrong with him. But what he does excite is whenever he's around someone, that he excites all of the most negative base emotions and responses that they could muster, that stir in their breast, and they don't know why. It's uncanny,
Yes.
you know? It's an uncanny feeling, and it's because he himself is so wrong, you know, he's so unnatural.
Yeah.
But the book takes pains to point out there is nothing physiologically aberrant or strange or unusual about him at all.
No.
And that's part
Yeah.
of the horror, you know, that's part of the horror of it. It's the fact that he is this guy. He's just a guy.
Yeah, I don't think you get a story like that now because you
No,
don't get that kind of repression of appetite that
no.
was such a Victorian
Right, it is so
sort of thing.
Victorian, isn't it? It's so
Yeah.
Victorian, and it works so well. I mean, what I really got from the book is that it's the kind of book that shocked me, to be honest, because I
Yeah.
was like, wow, I'm surprised you got this published and that it was so popular at the time, you know, because it doesn't describe anything, but it does poke at that Victorian repression and that veneer of morality and of politeness and etiquette. It says it's bullshit.
Well,
It
it's followed its similar vein by Dorian Gray, isn't it?
very much so, very much so. But then
I mean,
again,
Dorian Gray wouldn't work anymore either because
no,
that idea that because so much is sort of kept from you because there's so many experiences you can't have
right,
in that society that the only way to have them is to kind of become immortal so you can
right,
outlive the people who would tell you that you can't.
hmm
That doesn't work now because you can kind of do what you want in Western society now. If you want to
Pretty
go and
much.
have, I mean, it's very thinly veiled that he's talking about homosexual relationships in a lot of
Very. I
it,
mean, yeah.
but like, I'm a straight guy. If
Hmm.
I wanted to go out and have a sex with a bunch of men, I could do that.
You could do that
If
without.
I wanted to,
Right.
if I wanted to take drugs, if I wanted to do this, that, the other, I could do any of that,
Hmm.
and there's nothing to stop me doing it. So,
Right.
but like, and I could do that in my lifetime quite
Yeah.
easily. So, immortality would become redundant
That's it.
in that
And
way.
also, you could talk about it without fear
Yeah,
of
you
any
could.
kind of
Yeah,
reprisal. Unless you were doing something hideously immoral, you could talk about it without any real repercussion or without any,
yeah,
Whereas back then, I mean, that's really what they're getting at, isn't it? With
yeah. Of course it is.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and the picture of Dorian Gray, they're really looking at the boiling pot of this repression, this sort of, because that Jekyll is so that. I mean,
Yeah,
when I read it, and this may be because I identify as gay, this may be because I identify as gay, but when Jekyll talks about the unclean appetites that he's indulging, that's what I thought
it's
it
got to be
was.
that. I thought that as well. Yeah.
That's what I thought it was, which is ironic because Hyde is very straight.
Yes.
Oh, Hyde is like very like a very straight character, and not just because of what he does. He's just like coded as straight.
Yeah.
Everything about Hyde is this big rampant. He's technically, in Freudian terms, he's the big dick. He is like
Yeah.
he's all appetite and ego, but in a very straight way, which is kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just I think both of those books really are very, very much sort of products of the time in which
Mm.
they were written, and I think that's what kind of makes them so special is that you wouldn't write them now. It's not that you
Yeah.
couldn't; it's that you wouldn't. The impetus to write a story
Mm.
like that isn't there.
Right, you'd have to be. I mean, the only way I could think of is if you restructured them to refer to some of the sort of it baked in neuroses of our own cultures. That's the only way I could think of doing it. And in that regard, that might change them so significantly that you could do the picture of Dorian Gray in a sort of online format. With regards to things like Instagram and like Snapchat and where everything is very artificial and where everything is about
Yeah,
looking in a particular way or portraying yourself in a particular way. So if you had like I don't know, a selfie set or something, or a biography picture, like a profile picture that aged where you didn't, or something like that. That
but
that
what
might
is he
work.
doing? Because
Right,
the purpose of his immortality is so that he could
right,
experience everything and that he would outlive the people who had a problem with it.
right. You'd have to
But
like,
what is he doing?
yeah,
Because you could do anything you want anyway.
that's a fair point. You'd have to like make it really abstruse, wouldn't you? Like, yeah, it's a difficult one. That it is a difficult one. Um, the same is true of I mean, Jekyll and Hyde has been done a million. I mean, obviously, it's a
Yeah,
seminal text. It's like Frankenstein, isn't it? It's been done a million times in a million different ways, and often very badly. Often
well,
very
yeah,
badly. I
yeah.
mean, there was that Stephen Moffat show, wasn't there? It was just called
Oh, that was
Jekyll.
terrible. That was
Oh,
terrible.
after the first episode, I wanted to hurl something through the screen. I
It
really
was
did.
just so bad. It just felt like a kids show that could have
Yeah,
been on at like six
and
o'clock or something.
the way it
You know
just.
when you get something that feels like a kids show, but then
Mm,
occasionally they'll drop a swear word in
yeah,
it just
that
to say that it is for adults.
that
But
was it.
it felt like that.
Yeah, that was exactly it. That was exactly it. And the way it kept layering in stuff where it's like it couldn't just be a simple explanation. It was like, oh, there's a metaphysical reason. Oh, it's actually a genetic experiment by the army. Oh, it's a psychological thing. And it's like, just settle. Just
Yes.
go with
Yeah.
one, or don't explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go with one or the other, but don't just keep throwing shit at the audience to see what sticks.
No. Yeah. They kind of changed the origin of what it was
Right.
repeatedly throughout the. Yeah.
And that's kind of a shame for me because for me, one of the most fun things in the original Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is this notion. There's the slightly gothic imagery, isn't there, of like the laboratory with all
Yeah.
like the chemicals bubbling away, and the way it
Yeah. Very much.
explains like the creation of the formula, where he adds in all of these essential salts and things. And in the end, of course, you find out, again, massive spoilers, by the way, guys, but he finds out that he can't recreate the formula because the reason it worked is because of an impurity in one of the salts that he used, and he
Yes.
can't recreate the impurity. It's why he can't change back,
Yeah.
at the end, and
Yeah.
why
Something. Yeah.
he ultimately ends up stuck as Hyde, basically, which is really cool. I think I love that notion, the notion that like an impurity is why it worked.
Yes.
That's great fun, isn't it? That's great fun. In fact, I mean, we mentioned Frankenstein earlier, yeah? That's another one of mine.
Yeah.
I love the original Frankenstein. I love
So
it
do
to
I.
bits.
Yeah.
But do you know what I fucking hate? The portrayal of the monster in almost any fiction, in almost any film, in almost any comic, in almost any cinema TV, because they always get it wrong.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
profoundly wrong. The Boris Karloff monster, I just don't like it. I know it's enshrined, I know it's an iconic symbol of horror. I just don't like it because it's not what the monster
No,
is.
it's not. It kind of defeats the point.
Yeah, it.
And the kind of something I've noticed with the Universal Studios horror films. I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love them. It's like a
Yeah,
classic layer of horror
yeah,
films. It's what introduced me to them. But I've noticed that they quite often sort of wuss out on
yes,
the point of the story.
yeah,
So, like you've just said it about the Frankenstein monster there.
hmm
They also do it with the Invisible Man.
yes,
Because in the
yes,
original Invisible Man, the whole point is this formula will corrupt you.
yeah.
The idea of being able to get away with anything
That's it, isn't it?
will
That's
take
it.
a normal man and make you do things that you wouldn't normally do just because there's no consequence.
Because there are
But
no
in the film,
consequences. Yeah.
they blatantly say the formula gives you brain damage.
Oh, they wuss out.
So they wuss out and
Yeah.
say it's not his fault, it's the formula. Because the whole
Mm,
point of it is you would abandon your morality if you
hmm
could get away with anything. That's what the
So
point of the book is.
they
And they just wuss
were
that out on the film.
they were afraid of the misanthropy inherent in the original
Yes.
text, essentially. And that's such a shame because it is essential to make it work.
Yes.
If it's just the formula, it's like, well, that's kind of dull, isn't it?
Yeah. You take this and it makes you insane. And it's like when with the Frankenstein monster, the
Mm.
idea that in like the Universal monsters where it's like they put the wrong brain in or
Right,
whatever, so
right.
he's actually like a serial killer's brain or
hmm
something. It's like no, the point of this story is that humans create their own monsters by the way that
That's
you treat people.
that
That's the
is
point.
exactly it. That is the monster in the book is elemental humanity. He's like a human being who has been born as an adult, but
Yes,
with none of the essential experiences to make him rounded, to temper him, to make him into something more humane. And the way he is treated as a result, the sheer inhumanity that he experiences at the hands of his father, at the hands of all the other human beings in the book, turns him into something monstrous.
exactly.
You
But
know?
you lose all that in the
Yeah.
Universal ones.
Yeah, and also all of the ambiguity, like there are beautiful moments in the original book where the monster's really loquacious. It talks all the time. It doesn't just wander around going,
No.
It talks there are whole chapters where it sits down with Victor Frankenstein and talks to him about what it's been experiencing, what it's
Yeah.
been learning. It talks about how like it knows how to play instruments, it knows how to it learns things and remembers things from the people it was comprised of.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing that it's beautiful. It dares to ask. The whole thing is the question of what is human.
Yes.
It's existential ultimately. And you also get the fact that obviously characters like Victor Frankenstein are the real monsters, the ones who
Yes.
who do things without any consideration for the consequences.
Yeah. It's just because you can doesn't
Just
mean you
yeah,
should.
just
That's kind of the whole point, isn't
that
it?
is exactly it. Just because you can doesn't give you the right to do it.
Yeah.
And he does the ultimate evil, ultimately. He creates a consciousness and then rejects it. He doesn't
Yeah.
take time to shape or to love or to make it into to make the imposition of its consciousness worthwhile. Yeah.
It's not immediately the child that he wanted, so he just discards it.
Right.
That's
Right.
basically it. It's like a metaphor for having a
Hmm.
disabled child or
Yeah.
something. It's yeah,
Well, I mean,
it's
it's a really complex metaphor for like the entire tension between child and parent, between
yeah,
created and creator, and it
yes,
takes it that far. It's like it's not just father, parent, and child; it's also God and humanity. What the book asks in a kind of like blasphemous way is, what right does anyone have to create a consciousness?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what it
true.
asks, is what right do you have to impose consciousness on something and then expect it to be what you want of it?
That's the point, isn't it? Expecting it to be what you want it to be.
Right.
You can't decide, oh, I'm going to have a little boy and he's going to be into
Mm,
football like I am, and he's
right.
going to be butch and he's going to be this. No, no, he might be gay and a ballet
Mm,
dancer and really effeminate. That's
right.
not your decision.
It's
You
not up
can't
to you.
force him to not be. Yeah,
Right. And it's a really dark meditation on how parents live through their children, and how
yes,
there's this incredibly dark, I mean, this is way before Freud, obviously, but there is this dark Freudian thing going on between parents and children in Frankenstein, where all of the neuroses and the disappointments and the problems of the parent get imposed on the child. It's really complex, but very often in the film versions you get none of that.
no. Did you watch the play with Benedict Cumberbatch?
You know what? I
That was
didn't.
very good.
I
That
didn't,
was very good.
unfortunately. I would have
They
loved
did a
to.
lot of that in there. It was
Yeah,
very yeah. I remember watching it and feeling at some points like this is really uncomfortable to watch, but
which it
in a good
should
way
be. It should
because
be
it's meant
because,
to be.
well, yeah,
It's
the
meant to
book's
be,
like that. I mean, the book's like that. I mean, like, how the funny thing, I imagine this is a massive surprise for most people who come to the book. The most iconic scene in most Frankenstein films, which is the creation scene where it's
Yes.
birthed. That's not in the book.
No.
It's not in the book. There's no lightning. There's no like lab. There's no. He creates the fucking thing in his university apartments. It's not in a lab. You know.
Yeah.
There's no like big cathode and anode with lightning arcing between them and all. There's none of that. He actually goes into Victor Frankenstein because he's overcome with like the weight of what he's done and what he's doing. He goes into this like fugue state, like this fevered fugue state where he can't remember.
Yeah.
He can't even remember how he did it, and the book certainly doesn't explain how he did it.
No. Well, it's not relevant.
It's not
That's not the
relevant.
point.
No,
It's not a field guide.
nope.
It doesn't matter how it got made.
It's absolutely correct. Yeah, it doesn't matter, and it clearly doesn't matter because the book just skips over it. It just
Yeah.
skips over it. It points out that he, through certain means that he has invented, that he creates this man.
Yeah.
That's all it tells you. That
Yeah.
is it. And then
Well, that's all it needs for the purpose of the story.
that's it, because it's not about that. It's not interested in that minutiae. What it's interested in is the tensions that arise from that. And the
Yeah.
tensions are amazing because they're so complex and they're so human and sad, and it's more than anything the book is sad. It's this
Yeah, there's
sad,
definitely this melancholy
like,
tone to it, and intentionally so.
right, this reflection on humanity and the way it treats itself. That's the big thing. Like, for me, one of the saddest things in the whole book is when the monster is telling Frankenstein about how he fled into the forests, and he determined he was going to live apart from humanity because he'd seen enough. He'd seen enough. And he finds the family who live in their relatively modest little home.
Oh yes, of course, yeah, a little
And
farm, so yeah,
he kind of falls in love with them. He
yeah,
likes to watch them, and he helps them get the harvest in
yeah.
when it's frozen,
The
and they
ground's frozen and
that's
they can't get
right.
it out.
And
Yeah, but
they
he's
think,
just preternaturally strong, isn't he?
right,
So he, yeah,
and they think that it's some like spirit of the forest or something that's helped them, and then they see him,
yeah,
and it all falls apart. This lovely moment. It all
yeah,
falls apart, and it is so sad.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing. It is the worst thing. It makes you think there could be some hope here, you know?
Yeah, that's then it takes it away.
And then it
Well,
takes it away. Yeah.
so speaking of dead characters, then,
Mm,
so my most favourite genre of monster
mm.
is actually ghosts
Ghosts, yeah.
because of the sheer variety of what you can do. It's kind of the antithesis to what we said about the werewolves, in that
Right.
they're kind of stuck in one thing. There is so much you can do
Right.
with
I
ghosts.
mean, well, even when you say ghosts, I mean, how many extrapolations
Well,
can
we did a
you?
whole like 3 hour podcast on
Right.
that,
Yeah. I mean, it's
so
like but that's it, isn't it? That you can do so much. I mean, it's not just like the spirits of the dead, but even in that, there's so
yeah.
much. There's so much potential.
Are they conscious? Are they not? Are they
Right.
malevolent? Are they not? Are they, why are they here? What are they aware of you?
Hmm.
It's so much you can do with it,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just my favourite one to read and to watch and to write as well.
It
I put ghosts in quite a lot of my work.
Right. I mean, it can be so beautiful as well. I mean, there's an immediate metaphysics for one thing. There's with a ghost, there's an immediate metaphysical question, you know, and that is so much fun to explore. I find like it's the questions that arise from the very existence of ghosts, which you
Exactly, it
know.
opens up so many doors, doesn't it?
I love that to bits, and the fact that you've got so much going on. So you can go for like the Edgar Allan Poe approach, where it's always the spirit of the dead. It's always like
Yeah.
someone who's come back from the dead somehow, or that's lingering. Or you can go for like the stone tape thing, where
Yes.
it's a recording somehow. It's something that's seeped into the environment. You can even, I mean, now we talked about this before, but there are things like data ghosts, you know, on the internet. There are virtual ghosts, you know.
Did you see that BBC drama about ghosts a couple of years ago that was really it was weird, but I liked it. Where there was a setting in like 17th century in this mansion,
Hmm.
and they were being haunted by these figures.
Right.
And then in the modern day, it kept cutting to the modern day, so like now,
Hmm.
and they were being haunted by different figures, and they were living in the house now.
Oh yeah,
And they were
that
kind of being haunted by each other. And at the
yes.
very end, the people in the modern day crash their car into the swamp, and then in the 17th century, they pull the car out of the swamp.
Yeah, what
And
was
it's like
that?
some weird time travel sort of thing where they're kind of
Yeah,
seeing each other through a veil, and that's what the haunting is.
I
And
can't.
and I can't remember what it was called, but it was
I
weird. But I
do.
liked
I
that.
do remember that. Yes, I can't for the life of me remember what it was called. But again, doesn't it demonstrate like what you can do here? It's very like
Yeah,
I mean, it's very vogue at the moment, of course, because like you know you've had the haunting of Bly Manor just turned
yeah,
up. Um, and those series, like both the Haunting of Hill House and the Haunting of Bly Manor, both give you what appear to be very traditional ghost stories, but then play with
yes.
the sort of metaphysics of it and the science fiction of it, and I love that to bits. I love
I
that.
do, but I've just started Blind Manor, and I'm
Mm.
annoyed that it's an adaptation of Turn of the
It's
Screw.
Turn of the Screw, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
but it's like, Christ, how many adaptations of that is there?
To
Come
be
on,
fair,
there's enough
yeah,
ghost
there are a lot.
stories.
There are a lot. It's true. It's a very good adaptation. I was,
I've,
I,
I've no doubt that it is, but there's enough ghost stories out there that you
mm,
don't have to use that one again.
I know what you mean. I mean, to be fair to it, it is the Turn of the Screw, but it's actually almost every other story Henry James has ever written as well,
Yes,
all sort of
yeah.
like thrown together, you know.
It's like a Henry James shared universe.
Pretty much, it kind of, yeah, kind of, yeah. And in that regard, it kind of does demonstrate how you can like make like your own mythologies out of this stuff, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I I
Well, I love that.
I
I
think
really
that's
like it, and
great.
I'm enjoying Blind Manor. I am, but I just when I saw
Mm.
that, I thought,
You
oh,
thought, oh no, yeah. You thought, oh
yeah.
yeah. I
I
mean,
must have seen 3
actually,
adaptations of this
I
in the
mean,
last 5 years.
actually, the Turn of the Screw is another really good example of what you can do with ghost stories, where they're
Yeah.
like it's a ghost story but not,
Yes.
where the ghosts are psychological, you know, where they're shades haunting us in our minds,
The
you know.
best ghost stories, in my opinion, are the ones where you're left with some ambiguity about whether it happened or not.
Yeah.
The best example of this is not even a horror story, and it's Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol, yeah,
You
yeah.
get to the end of that, another one we've done a podcast about.
Yep.
You get to the end of that, and you don't know if it happened or not.
And actually, I mean,
he might have dreamt the whole thing.
That's another good example of how like the notion of ghosts can be completely like turned on their head. So the ghosts in A Christmas Carol are entirely positive entities.
Well, Marley is the only. Well, apart from you see the other spectres in the sky and you see the horse and carriage, but of the main four spirits, Marley is the only one that's actually the ghost
a
of
ghost.
the
The others are like principles,
like elemental,
yeah,
angelic beings, aren't they?
That's right. That's absolutely true. Yes, absolutely true. But even then, I mean, like Marley, as you know, he himself sadly is damned, but he's doing something positive, isn't it? You know, he's an agent of positive change, and that's really cool.
He's been trying to contact Scrooge every day since he died.
Yeah.
And on this one occasion, he's finally able to.
And he actually says, doesn't he?
That. Yeah, he says, I've sat by your bedside many nights trying to speak to
and
you.
That's know
chilling,
why.
Isn't it?
He doesn't know why on that night, why this time it's worked.
But when he's finally able to, he does it to help him.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's kind of a redemption arc for him in that.
I like that.
For him, as well as Scrooge.
I must admit, I really like that. There's, again, you get that in like the adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House as well. There's like a redemptive element to the metaphysics, which I must admit, I mean, there is a tendency that can become saccharine, or it can like undermine the horror of the piece, but actually when it's done well, I really love it. I think it's a very, because there is an almost hopefulness almost inherent in the metaphysics of ghosts, in the sense that like there's a continuation of some state of consciousness. I kind of love that. I do kind of love that. And when stories acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's the very fact that they exist suggests that there is something after it. Right. So if in your world they exist, then...
I mean, I'm reading at the moment, you know, your Infestation comic book, and I've just got to like the Ghostbusters part. And the Ghostbusters, I've always found, I mean, I love the Ghostbusters mythology and their portrayal of ghosts and everything. I think it's great fun. But when you think about it, the Ghostbusters are doing something terribly, terribly wrong. In the sense that if there are ghosts in their universe, and there are, then surely they're supposed to exist. Surely they're part of like the metaphysical machinery of that universe, and by trapping them and by taking them out,
you're interrupting the natural flow of things.
Surely isn't that what they're doing?
But there's two types of ghosts in Ghostbusters. Again, as with Christmas Carol, a lot of the ghosts in it aren't actually ghosts, are they?
Ghosts. No, they're not. They're like, in fact, there's like everything and your mum and dad in the Ghostbusters. You know, it's like there's mythological entities, there's fairies, there's banshees, there's Lovecraftian entities. You know.
Yeah, well, that's what Gozer is, isn't it?
Gozer's totally Lovecraftian. I mean, and when I say Lovecraftian entities, there's very literal Lovecraftian entities. Yeah. There's like Cthulhu, that's you know, and Dagon and whatnot. There are like demi-gods, and there are Nordic gods, and there are demons, and there are angels. There's everything you can possibly think of in Ghostbusters. Anything that's even vaguely mythological goes in Ghostbusters, you know.
But you do actually get the departed dead as well.
Oh yeah. There are actually, like, you know, when people die in the Ghostbusters mythology, then they either become like classic ghosts where they look like phantasmal human beings, or they become like demonic abstracts of themselves, you know.
Yes.
It's kind of weird.
I think that depends on their anger or not.
Yeah.
Like, do you know the TV series Supernatural?
I do, yeah. Have I ever told you how that was sold to me?
No.
One of my ex-boyfriends, who's a really good friend now, he sold it to me as in very few words. He basically said, hot guys, monsters, and demons. I was
Fair point. Yeah,
I'm in. You know, I'm all in.
Well, something I like about the portrayal of ghosts on that is the idea that you're not meant to be one. So that if you die, you are meant to move on. Right. But if you choose not to, then that will be detrimental to you.
Oh,
and you just end
right.
up becoming this like hostile, angry, mindless thing.
Oh, I
And they even
see.
demonstrate that with one of their own characters in the early seasons, Bobby, who is a friend of theirs,
Mm,
and he dies.
right.
And he stays around as a ghost
Hmm.
because he wants to kill the person that killed him.
Oh, I
But
see.
he just starts getting so as a ghost, he kind of follows Sam and Dean around,
Right.
but he just starts getting mindlessly angry and attacking them and other
Right.
people. And he's like, at one point, he can't even remember his own name, and
So there's like
he's
a
so he's kind
degenerative thing.
yes, he's kind of suggested that holy shit, every ghost they've ever fought against started off like this. And through like
Oh,
a process somewhat like Alzheimer's, they can't even
yeah.
remember why they're here, who they're angry at,
So
and they just attack everybody.
you fade. You sort of like lose yourself over time. I like
Yeah,
that. I like
because you
that.
are not supposed to stay here. Your consciousness is linked to your brain. Once your
Hmm.
brain is rotting in the ground, everything you are starts to slip away, and all that you're left with is the anger that kept you here in the first place.
I do like that.
So
That's
then,
very cool.
originally, you were a woman who was raped to death in
Mm.
your bedroom, and you're angry about that, understandably.
Mm.
But 200 years later, you're just a screaming banshee that attacks anyone who comes into your bedroom.
That's very clever because you can use that as the basis for like just said a banshee. Well,
Yeah,
banshees suddenly make total sense, don't they?
yeah, well, that what they did with that on Supernatural is that Sam and Dean kind of had this thing about they suddenly felt a little bit guilty about all the
Mm.
ghosts that they destroyed because they're
Right.
like, shit, these might have been,
Mm.
these were someone's dad, someone's brother, someone's
Hmm.
friend who might have had a perfectly justifiable reason for wanting to stick around,
Right.
but now they've degenerated to something else,
That's very
you know.
cool. I like
And
that.
I liked that. I thought that was
Mm.
really deep and really well done. And to do it with one of the main characters as well was
Mm.
was was a really good decision.
Yeah, yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's a very cool take. I mean, it is again. I mean, ghosts. I love ghosts to bits. I love ghost stories. A good ghost story will get me every single friggin' time. It is. I mean, it is difficult because again, there are so many. There are so many. Making it work is difficult.
Yeah.
It's a hard task. It's a thankless task. I would say it's a hard one. But when it hits, when it's done right, when it's done well, whew, ooh,
Oh yeah.
it's there's nothing really like it. There is nothing like a really good ghost story.
Yeah, well, that's they've always been my favourite
Mm.
thing as long as I remember. So, which is what's yours then?
Well,
What's your
mine is
top one?
difficult. Mine is really difficult because I've got such a thing for monsters and creatures of any kind, to be honest. I've always found like liminal entities, creatures, monsters of any description fascinating. And if it's a good monster, if it's got some patina around it, if it's got some mythology about it, I'm in. I'm
Do you
in.
prefer things that are a one-off? Because I do.
Yeah, I
So
like.
something that's like a race where
Yeah.
there's a monster in this woods, but there's 500 of them.
Mm,
I don't find that half as interesting as where it's a one-off
yeah.
thing
When it's
that
like
there's just one of it in
like a
that wood.
unique entity. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm totally
Yeah.
into that. I'm totally into that. I love it to bits. It's why, I mean, for all of its faults, I mean, and it took me a while to warm up to it. It really did. It's why I love a lot of Lovecraft stories.
Yes.
Because the man is the past master at creating the most inventive creatures imaginable. These entities that kind of defy like assumptions of biology, but which are so intricately drawn. Things like the great old ones, from the
Oh,
Mountains of
absolutely. Yeah.
Madness, which are he describes them in the most explicit detail, but they're so abstruse and they're so alien that they're almost impossible to imagine. These like upright cucumber bodies with splayed starfish openings at the base and at the
Yeah.
head, from which tendrils and wings emerge with like smaller starfish appendages at
I
the
think the
ends.
fact that it's really difficult to picture them is intentional.
Oh, of course, yeah. What he didn't want, he didn't. Ironically, it's ironic because people have tried to do it a million times now. It's almost a franchise now, trying to portray Lovecraftian entities. He didn't want people to do it.
No.
You weren't meant to do it. The same is true of Cthulhu. Cthulhu is everywhere. Everyone knows what Cthulhu looks like, but you read the story, you read Call of Cthulhu, and he's very explicit about the fact that this is just what the human mind can
Yeah,
perceive.
that's the closest to it that you can get.
It's
Yeah.
not what the entity actually looks like, because the entity itself would drive you mad. It would cause your brain to explode if you saw it.
Yeah.
That's true of almost all of Lovecraft's entities. They are so out there and so bizarre that just seeing them or being near them is enough to drive you mad. And I love that. You know what I love more than anything? Elaborate monstrosity.
Yes.
When you've got something that's so weird and so detailed and bizarre that you can't even perceive it. I
Yeah. Well,
love
I
that.
think Girls is an interesting example of that,
Yeah,
added with a bit of comedy added in, because
right,
it cannot take its form in our dimension.
right. Because
Because it
the
just cannot exist here. Our
right,
dimension is too narrow. The scope of our reality is too narrow for this thing to. It's like we're a fish tank, and
yeah,
this thing's the size of a bulldozer. So
right.
it can't exist in that fish tank.
It's
So it
like
has to take the form of some little plastic toy that you're going to put in the fish tank. But it's
right.
going to let you decide which toy to put in there.
It's like us who exist in three-dimensional space trying to force our way into a two-dimensional plane.
Yeah, you're trying to force yourself onto a piece of paper.
Right, we can't do
So you
it.
can't do that. So you say to someone who is in that piece of
Hmm.
paper, you get to decide what I draw myself in as.
Right, right, yeah. I mean, I can have an avatar. That's what it's like, isn't it?
Yes,
It's
and
like
that's
having,
basically what the Stay Puft Marshmallow
yeah.
Man is.
The
It's
fact,
Gozer, it's
the
just the
fact,
avatar.
the fact that the ultimate like this Lovecraftian entity that is so complex it can like destroy or create dimensions just by existing, forces itself into the shape of the Stay Puft Marshmallow.
I
It's
know, I
so
love that.
brilliant.
I will never stop finding that to be one of the
It
most brilliant
is.
pieces of horror
It's
fiction ever.
amazing. It's amazing. I love that to bits. I love
Yeah,
that to
it's
bits.
one of my favourite things. I will never stop being amused by that.
Well, it is
The
like
fact that
it's the ultimate satire of Lovecraftian cosmic horror, isn't it?
well, it's kind of a piss take on humanity as well,
Oh
in that
yeah.
we're going to choose the form of what destroys us. So we pick something so ridiculous
Right.
because the extent of our imagination is so limited
Right,
that all
right.
we think of is the last thing we ate.
Yeah. There is yeah, that is brilliant, isn't it? That
Did you
is
hear the rumor that it
brilliant.
was originally meant to be Ronald McDonald?
No. Oh
I
god,
don't know
that
how much truth is in this, but
wow.
I've got a book of Ghostbusters trivia, and it's mentioned in that
Wow.
originally it was meant to be Ronald McDonald, but they wouldn't consent to having their mascot as a force of
As
destruction.
being the destroyer of creation,
And
yeah.
then they were going to do Mickey Mouse, but they were told the same thing. So
Ooh.
then they just made something up. But in
Mm,
an interesting version of sort of life imitating art,
mm,
you can now buy Stay Puft Brand marshmallows in America.
brilliant.
I bought some when I was in New York, but they have existed since the late 80s.
Hmm.
So there will be people, young people,
Yeah.
who have bought those thinking that they were an actual thing
Yes.
that the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was based on,
Right. Right.
rather than
Oh,
the actual thing in that they were made as a result of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man being created. You know, he was made up as
absolute.
if he was an
Yeah.
existing brand, but he
Right.
isn't. He was made up for that film. But now you can get marshmallows with him on, which
Absolutely
Dan
brilliant.
Aykroyd and whatnot authorised because they said, yeah, that's great,
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah. So it's like
So,
imitating art, imitating
yeah,
life, imitating art.
yeah,
It's that whole Ouroboros. Yeah.
yeah.
Ah, that is brilliant. That is amazing. The thing is, if I went through like the monsters that inspire me and the monsters that arouse my interest, we'd be here all fucking night. I I've always been obsessed with monsters of any
Same, yeah.
description. Always, I love like fantastical and mythological monsters. Dragons.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I've got a love affair, a lifelong love affair with dragons. I think they are one of the most sublimely beautiful entities.
There is something uniquely kind of beautiful about them, isn't there, which
Yeah.
you don't get with a lot of other entities.
They encapsulate something that I find to be almost uncanny. It's almost beyond description what it is. I don't know what it is, but I find them ineffably beautiful. And almost
Yeah.
anything that's got dragons in it, I'll be there, you know, I'll be there.
Yes.
Um, the same is true. I mean, as I've grown, it's more elaborate monstrosity. Clive Barker's monsters and creations. I mean, have you read like Barker's fiction? Have you read like stuff like Weave World and the Books of Blood and whatnot?
I've read some of his stuff, but not
Oh
all of
my
it. No.
God, he's like Lovecraft turned up to the power of N, but with none of the hang-ups that Lovecraft had. So these entities can be sexual, they can be like metaphysical, they can be art. They're amazing. The entities that Barker creates are, and also they're unlike anything. It's like Barker is operating on a plane that is so far beyond that anything anybody else is doing that they
Sure.
they
Yeah.
appear. Sometimes what he's trying to describe is it's like being on a trip. You literally can't even begin to imagine what these things are. A really good example, Pyopa. There's a creature in Imagica, the book Imagica, called Pyopa. And Pyopa's shtick is that they are an entity that is not male or female, or not even male and female. They exist on a spectrum of sex that is beyond what we presume of that.
Yes.
They are outside that spectrum. So there's something entirely other. And there's a moment in it where Barker tries to describe what that is. And it's like, it's this weird, like, it's anatomy as metaphysics. It's so weird. It's beautiful and bizarre and like so far beyond what you'd presume of anatomy that it hits you as though you've taken a drug.
Yeah, because it's meant to exist outside our concept of reality, if you
Right.
like. So it's got to be something that feels confusing to
Hmm.
even imagine.
Yeah. It's stuff like that. It's stuff like that that gets me. It's when it's the portrayal of angels in fiction. Have you ever read Revelations? Have you ever read like the
Oh
biblical
yeah,
portrayal of
yeah, it's
angels?
mental.
The it's
Yeah,
like the biblical portrayal of angels is like, what the
they're like
fuck?
3,000 feet tall, and they've got
Right.
17 wings and four
Yeah,
heads,
and
and
like
yeah,
millions of burning eyes, and they're like
yeah,
wheels of fire turning within them, and it's like, what the fuck? What were the people on who wrote this? And it's amazing. That I love.
yeah,
That. Oh my God, when they get angels right, I think it's amazing. I think it's beautiful. And the fact that and the same is true of demons as well. I mean, I talked about demons earlier, but when they get demons right as well, I love it. I love it to bits.
yeah,
When they are these avatars of like passion, and even when it's
yes,
dark passion, I like that a lot. Wait, in like the Games Workshop universes, you've got the gods of chaos, and they create
yes,
demonic avatars of themselves, and they're like elemental avatars of human passions. So you've got Nurgle, the demon god of despair, and the things that he creates are these like rotting, shambling, ever despairing entities. I love that. You've got my favorite, Slanesh, who's the god of desire and obsession, and the entities that Slanesh creates are these. They're just unbridled appetite and passion.
yeah,
I kind of love that. I've got a real connection to that. But when I love it when creators make their own monstrosities,
yes,
you
yeah,
know,
very much, yeah, yeah.
I
You get
love
something
that.
unique out of it.
And when they
I
do
like when you
it,
get something that becomes kind of a like I know it's a controversial choice given the director, but something
mm,
like the creature in the Jeepers Creepers films, for
no,
instance, you've
yeah,
now got a new type of monster
right,
that's a one-off thing, and it's been added to the pantheon of werewolf,
hmm,
vampire, this thing.
right.
I can't remember the name of it now, but I
Oh, the
like something
creeper,
like that
the
where you manage
creeper,
to
yeah,
create something creeper. That's it.
the
You manage
creeper,
to
yeah.
create something that is added to the pantheon of
Mm.
things.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite examples in recent years was the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, And we've got the
Oh,
Slender Man, of course, and anything like
Slender
that.
Man, yeah, that's a really good shout. Slender Man, like stuff that's born on the internet from the collective unconscious of the internet. There are so many of them now. Things like the Slender Man, like the Rake,
Yeah,
stuff. Oh, that some of that stuff is incredible. I love that shit. Because to me,
yeah.
that's human mythology. That's where it's born. It shows you that no matter where human beings operate, no matter what arena we operate in, we're going to mythologize it. We're going to make monsters and creatures and entities out of it. I love that.
Yeah, I like the human capacity to just make up
Mm.
stories is just great.
It does it for me. Every time that does it for me. It inspires me. That for me is what is worthwhile in humanity. And right now, under current circumstances, sometimes it's hard to see that.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's hard to appreciate the beauty in the human soul. But you will find it if you look.
yeah. I think I think it's a great thing to be able to just make up bollocks,
Yeah,
but as long as you're clear on the fact that it is, because
right.
far too often in human history, someone's decided to make up a load of bollocks
Mm.
and tell other people, and then use it to control them.
Right, or they've taken it too seriously. I mean, again, the Slender
Yes.
Man's a good example of that because there are people who
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
real. The Slender
Yeah.
Man
There's
is
been deaths
like,
because of that.
right, the
Yeah.
Slender Man has transcended his origins on the internet and it's become like a waking urban myth.
Yeah.
And that's it's fascinating and potentially horrific at the same time. You know,
Well,
it's got nothing to do. It's not like it is not an argument against the phenomena. It's got nothing to do with anything inherent to the Slender Man itself.
no, no, no.
It just shows you how oft human beings respond to the things they create, that they conjure, that they dream.
Well, once you've created something, it's out of your hands, really.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
You
You
know,
bear no responsibility. You know.
like I've heard a friend of mine who we've had on before, Casey. He's a
Casey.
musician.
Yeah.
He said before that he's had people talk about songs that he's written
Hmm.
and said that like, oh, I always think of this song because of my girlfriend and we went out first
Mm.
time and had this on or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, actually, it's meant to be about something else.
Right.
But he says, well, actually, once it's out there, it's not really up to you.
It's absolutely true. It's not up to me. Yeah.
It's not
You.
up to you what people see that song as. You might
Right.
have wrote it as a depressing song, but
Right.
someone else has it as their first dance at a wedding, you know?
Right.
So
And if
it's not up
that's
to you, really.
if that's what they take from it, if that's like the significance they've derived, and like that's how they've remade the story or the song or whatever in their own minds, brilliant.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah,
That's
it's not
wonderful.
really up to you. So
Well,
yeah,
you can't dictate how people perceive things,
no,
and determine significance. That's not up to you because you don't have territory in their minds. It's up to them.
no, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I love that. As someone who writes stories, I love that. I think that's an amazing thing. It's something I try to play into when I write. It's something I try to sort of foster.
One of my favourite things is where I'll be talking to two people about something I've written,
Mhm,
or just one person, sorry, about something I've written,
mhm.
and they will say something that I hadn't even considered.
Right.
Do you know what I
That's
mean? Like they will
that's
say, "I thought this character was a right arsehole," and I
right.
thought, "Oh, I thought I wrote him as being quite nice. Why did he
Yeah.
think that?" And they'll explain, and you think that's a really valid point, because they've seen something
Hmm.
about the way he acts or something, and just interpreted in a different way. But
I
they're not wrong
no.
because all that means is that you've written a character who's rounded enough
Hmm.
that people will have different opinions about them because that's what happens in real life.
Absolutely.
Every human being is a different character depending on who you ask. Some
Yeah.
people will think you're an absolute arsehole. Some people will think you're great.
And
And
you
if
can't
they're saying
control
that
it.
about, no, you can't. And if they're saying that about your fictional characters, then you must have done a good job.
Right, I totally agree. Yeah, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful
Yeah,
thing.
it is.
Unexpected reaction is the best thing I find. It
Yeah.
is the best thing when they see something or perceive something or it resonates with them in a way you never imagined it ever could or would.
Yes.
I love
Very
that.
much. Yeah.
And on that note, Lex, my dear, I'm conscious of time for you.
Yes.
So shall we draw that to a close? Is there
Yes.
anything, by the way, that you'd like to pimp out? I know there's a fair bit out there at the moment.
I've not got anything new coming out, except one thing. I have been working on a comic strip with my friend Liam Hill, who did the illustration for my children's book, The Old One and the Sea.
Right.
He's got. We're planning to release it in time for Halloween. It was one of those ideas that starts as like a joke, and then you start thinking about it, and you think, "Now we can actually do this."
Brilliant.
So it's a comic strip series, and it's about a vampire who investigates mysteries with his butler Bonesworth, who's like a skeleton butler, and it's very brief, very short, sharp, sort of silly, irreverent humour. And the series is called The Anticlimactic Adventures of Detective Vampire, and they will be out soon. And they're not chargeable. They're not even in print. They're just going to be for free, and we're just going to put them on Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of thing. So Liam will be putting them there as well. So once they're out and they're available, we will start putting them out. But I mean, if anyone liked them enough that they wanted them in print, I'm sure it will be possible to get them a copy of it done in print.
Awesome stuff. That's brilliant. Love it. And I will also link, by the way, as I often do, to The Old One and the Sea and The Other Side of the Mirror down below. Anything else, Lex? Is there anything else out there you want to?
Nothing yet. Everything of mine's kind of been pushed back due to COVID, so there's not a great deal of stuff coming out this year.
Same for me. I mean, same as usual, loves. You can find all of my published fiction over at strangeplaygrounds.com. Links below. The next Born in Blood volume will be out at some point. Next year there's going to be a collection of LGBTQ horror, fantasy, science fiction stories called Unburied, which has got my short story Blessed in it. So there's that. Beyond that, you can find me knocking about here at Exaggerated Elegy on YouTube. Thanks so much, Lex. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
As usual. It's been an absolute blast. That was loads of fun. Loads of fun.
Yeah, very much, yeah.
And until next time, my dears, bye-bye.
Bye.
X.